What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron Bafflestone. So, what's up, y'all? Been a minute. I know I haven't made videos in a while, but I'm making a video today. Why am I making a video today? Because I am inspired. And why am I inspired? Well, for two reasons. One, I just got back from Gen Con, and it was amazing. My second year, first year without masks, and I had a great time. I mean, man, I'm going to get Gen Con every year from here on out, and I highly recommend all of you check it out at some point as well. It's just so much fun. I played a ton of games. I played a ton of board games. I am a huge fan of the DC Heroes card building game now. That's amazing. And also Dominion. That's a really amazing game. But yeah, man, I enjoyed the cosplay, I enjoyed all the food, I enjoyed the city, I enjoyed playing on the same stadium, on the same field that the Indianapolis Colts play, because they encompass all of downtown Indianapolis, including the stadium, which is very cool. There was tons of cosplay. I had a great time talking to all sorts of gamer nerds like myself. I did get recognized again by one person, my massive fame in this niche business preceding me. My friends were very impressed. I had a great time at the dance party. I mean, good times. Y'all should check out Gen Con one day. So I was inspired by that. And the other reason that I was inspired was because of another channel called CMCC Builds, which is doing a super cool series called the Gauntlet, which came onto my radar when someone in my Patreon mentioned it, and I checked it out. And what it is a series of very difficult encounters that is intended to stress test builds at various levels. This particular one that the video series about is for level 14. And it was super difficult. I watched a 3-parter where Nuke, an evoker wizard with a simulacrum, couldn't make it through. And then there was a zealot barbarian that couldn't make it through. And then Treant Monk himself, the famed Treant Monk, was convinced to take part in the Gauntlet, and he couldn't make it through, even though he had a pretty crazy build that he assembled that was, intended to be a good one for the Gauntlet. So I thought it was a very entertaining series. I really was impressed by the editing. This guy, Mike, who runs the channel, recreates all of the battles from my session was 10 hours of footage. Recreates them all, makes them really clear and easy. And guys, if you don't make YouTube videos, I promise you, editing is a bitch. These are just so well edited, so well put together. They're really worth a watch. I've put links to literally every single one of the videos in the description below. Please check them out. So I was really impressed by this Gauntlet, and then I was quite honored to be asked to participate. And I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like so much fun. And I immediately started thinking, how do I want to approach this? How do I want to approach this? Because we were encouraged to, watch the previous videos, and I watched the previous videos already, so I kind of knew what the deal was and how the battles were structured. And I thought, I could metagame a build or use one of my builds that I think is particularly well suited for this series of encounters. But that's not really my style. Metagaming is something I'm allergic to mostly. And so I immediately thought, well, maybe I should take my absolute favorite character ever into this Gauntlet and see how he does. And so that's what I did. I have a Dowlock build, the Bilbron Dowlock Stone build, that I have been playing from levels 2 to 18 on a Westmarch server over the last couple of years, who is now my favorite character ever. Just a straight Dowlock, which is a very strong subclass, don't get me wrong, but no multi-classing or soar-locking or anything too crazy. This was a build that I wanted to optimize through piloting and playing, as opposed to putting together a whole bunch of multi-classing to cherry-pick different abilities that worked well together. And man, just reminiscing, he was so strong at level 3 because chainlocks basically get extra attack at level 3, and it's like a crazy strong attack through their imp and investiture of the Chainmaster. And then there was that period in like tier 2 where I was strong, but things were challenging. And then tier 3 was the same. I was even stronger and things were even more challenging. And now I'm in tier 4 where I'm like literally invincible and kind of just role playing out the string, having a blast doing it. And anyway, that is Scourge the Undying, or Scourge the Unconquered, who started out as the Bilbron Dalek Stone build. And I thought, man, I'd love to take this into the Gauntlet. So that's what I did. I took in a variant of the build because, this is a low magic world. I got one magic item, a Rod of the Packkeeper +1. So I'll put the build up on the screen and you can check it out. It's a pretty simple build where I had 18s in Con and Charisma because the feats I picked up were Resilient Constitution, which is amazing to have, then +1 Con, +1 Charisma to round them both out to 18, and then Lucky, because, Lucky's amazing. I took in some pretty standard invocations. I had Devil's Sight, Eldritch Mind, Agonizing Blast, Repelling Blast, and then 2 somewhat oddballs to satisfy the character's concept, which is that he considers himself an elemental prince and he wants superiority on earth, land, and sea. So he wants elemental superiority, as he calls it. So he has Eldritch Spear and Gift of the Depths. Eldritch Spear gives him air superiority. It has 300-foot range, so if I'm in the outdoors, I can use my elemental gift to confer upon me that fly and hover speed, and then just fly or dimension door up to 300 feet, a distance at which not much can touch you. I mean, most spells tap out way before then. Really, the only things that can hit you are like bows and the hurl boulders of some super strong giants. Otherwise, you're pretty safe up there and just peppering away, and yeah, pretty much auto wins in an air environment. And in the Westmarch server in which I'm playing him, he has a Cloak of the Manta Ray, which gives him, water environment, which gives him water superiority with that amazing speed, and he's able to kite and blast people with his elite ranged attacks. So the problem here was that I didn't have Cloak of the Manta Ray. So in an environment where he didn't have Cloak of the Manta Ray, this particular PC would 100% have Gift of the Depths, because that would confer him water superiority. So those were the invocations I took. Obviously, I took Pact of the Chain. This is a chain lock and a summoner. And my spell loadout is, got all of the basics plus some summoning stuff, because he's a summoner. So he's built around ultimate defenses. So I have ultimate defenses like Stone Shape and Wall of Stone and Dimension Door. And he's a summoner, so he has spells like Summon Aberration and Summon Greater Demon, and he took as his 6th level Mystic Arcanum Summon Fiend. Even though a lot of people take Mass Suggestion there, and I agree, yeah, that's a super strong spell, but this is a summoner, so I like Summon Fiend there. And of course Force Cage, because that's amazing. Probably the strongest 7th level spell, even though I think I have actually Plane Shift on my Westmarch version of this character, just because he actually never engages in combat anymore. He just sits in a sanctuary vessel and lets his summons do the work, headlined by an uber powerful simulacrum that he wished for, etc., etc. So that was the character that I took in, and I did some prep. So this is a bit controversial. People are saying that I got special privileges. Maybe, because the way they had it set up was like, you had like a day or two of prep. But if that were the case, I would have nothing to prep. And, Nuke brought in a simulacrum. So I thought that was a little bit unfair. And I also felt like with certain limited wish casts, you can create permanent effects. And these are something that you are going to do the instant you have that ability. And as long as they're not dispelled, which is very unlikely, they're going to remain. So I argued for the very limited number of permanent effects that you can cast with Limited Wish, which are 1, Immovable Object, 2, Major Image, upcast to Permanent Image, and 3, Leoman's Secret Chest. So I argued that, I should be allowed to have all of those things because it showcases what the build can do, and Nuke brought a simulacrum. I wasn't going to be able to bring anything under the current arbitrary prep rules. And Mike was kind enough to allow it. The philosophy at the Gauntlet is hey, you know what, let's try it out, and if it's broken, we can always ban it later, which I appreciate. And I appreciate being able to showcase the power of the build by bringing in these permanent effects, which, if you have limited wish, you are 100% going to put them in. And a movable object in particular was very strong in this encounter. The other stuff didn't play really any part in it, but a permanent immovable object on your clothes and that of your colleagues and such is really powerful. So that was the prep. And so then I went ahead and did the gauntlet. So first of all, I've done this with no spoilers so far. From here on out, there are going to be massive spoilers. And before you watch my breakdown and my thinking and the tactics that I employed, I urge you to go to CMCC Builds and watch the 2-part episodes where Bilbron takes on the gauntlet. I don't want to draw viewers away from his channel. He does amazing work. I am super duper impressed, just again, by the editing, by the quality of the videos, by how cool it is just to watch different builds go through this amazing stress test. So please, everyone, go check it out right now, and then come back to this video when you're done. I'll wait. Yeah, right. That was amazing. So, yeah, spoilers, I beat the gauntlet. Oh, feels so good. So how did I do it? So I'm going to go ahead and put the maps up for the first screen and just talk a little bit about what I saw in my thought process going in. So going in, I was using Pass Without Trace, and I was using my upcast permanent image, which was a cloud of black smoke, to kind of guard our approach to the facility, and I mostly just left it behind while we entered the facility and, encountered whatever was there. But doing so, plus Pass Without Trace, allowed us to get surprise on the initial wave of enemies, which was a couple of mummies and a couple of water weirds, which I saw from range, and so immediately called for my team to keep as close to the back wall as possible and engage these guys from range. Now, that was only possible because I was in total control of this battle and everyone that was in it. They were all my summons, and the 2 sidekicks, they're basically, summons. Powerful, no concentration summons. Not nearly as powerful as a PC. And so, if I was in a normal party, this probably wouldn't have been feasible because you tend to have warriors who like to run up at things and such, which I've often found to be suboptimal because oftentimes warriors, if they can't reach an enemy right away, they'll actually dash to get closer to that enemy, maybe right up onto them, which means they use their turn for movement and the enemy immediately gets to make an attack. You kind of want to reverse that scenario, and so you want to, if you can't reach the enemy in one turn and execute your attack sequence, you want to gauge the range where they require a dash to get to you, and then you can get an attack sequence off on them, and that allows you to get a free ranged attack sequence off on them, and maybe multiple if they don't actually close the range. So, because I was in control of my own team, I kept them back and wanted to engage the enemies from range. Plus, I also wanted to keep the Wall of Stone option available to protect my team, which doesn't have a huge area of effect, so if I have party members that are way out in the middle of the battlefield, I can't take care of them. So, because I was in total control of the players, I was able to keep everyone in a tight team, and so it took a couple rounds, and as the mummies and the water weirds approached, we just shredded them, with ranged attacks. It was, by the book, pretty simple. And then things got more complicated in round 3 when the 9 hunter sharks showed up. So this was a bit problematic because of the number of bodies and the actions that they would get, and so I immediately called for the Wall of Stone defense, which was ideal for this situation. I was able to make it pretty big and thick, about 6 inches the first one, which is 180 hit points. And I made sure to position my team so that they were at least 10 feet away from the crenellations that I had put throughout the wall so that we could get ranged attacks out, because I didn't want them to be in range of melee attacks of anything that approached the wall. This is not clear from the videos because for clarity purposes, Mike spread out our tokens, but in fact, I made sure that we were really tight and all within 2 squares, just stacked on top of each other with climb speeds and fly speeds and such that no enemy could touch us with melee attacks, and they didn't have ranged attacks, so the wall managed to keep them out while I was destroying them with ranged attacks. This is a good point to mention that I really screwed up with Limited Wish and my prep, and I came in with 7 Tiny Servants, assuming that I could cast Limited Wish and get Tiny Servants, which was totally wrong. I swear to God, I thought I had a 1-action casting time, and it doesn't. It has a 1-minute casting time. So I really regret that, especially since the whole point of this was to showcase what the build can do, and the build cannot create Tiny Servants. So I can only comfort myself with the fact that I deployed the Tiny Servants in a pretty tactically useful way, so people can at least learn from that who can cast Tiny Servant. And while the Tiny Servants did have an impact, so would have anything else I cast with Limited Wish. I don't think they changed the outcome. They did contribute damage, but in that first battle, using that Limited Wish on an Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, or even on a third Wall of Force or Wall of Stone, would have won that battle. And they weren't so critical in the second and third battle, and then they were killed almost immediately in the fourth battle. So I regret the mistake with the Tiny Servants. But in any case, the tactic was sound. We were able to hold off, even though a bunch of Chools appeared, and they were pounding on the Wall of Stone. And the Sharks were focus firing on one panel, which I don't know if I agree with that. That seems like a pretty smart tactic to execute for like one intelligent Sharks. I think more realistically, all of them trying to break through different panels, just being so stupid, would have made more sense. But, you know, whatever. The DM concentrated fire on one panel, and then the Chools were coming down to attack another panel, which I decided to use a, very valuable spell slot to Synaptic Static them, which I don't normally like to do because I'm not a huge fan of AoE, but the damage was solid, and more importantly, that debuff was going to really be helpful in preventing them from penetrating my Wall of Stone. Nonetheless, they started smashing through my Wall of Stone. I had to cast it again. This time I made it smaller and made it thicker so I could get 270 points of resistance. And then a Hydra showed up, so I was like, oh my god, I can't handle this right now. I just put it in a Force Cage right away, which, took it off the board, but that was my 7th level Mystic Arcanum. So yeah, this was a tough battle. I used all 3 of my spell slots. I used a 7th level Mystic Arcanum, and I used a Limited Wish for Tiny Servants, which I probably would have used it in this battle anyway, so that was a lot. But nonetheless, we managed to make it through, and the Wall of Stone tactic worked fantastic. I mean, I really think Wall of Stone is the strongest spell. Most people don't understand wall spells. They think that Wall of Force can create different shapes besides sphere, hemisphere, and flat plane, which it can't. And so the fact that Wall of Stone is literally the only spell that can create any shape, that can create crenellations, is really, really fantastic. It does have the limitation that you require stone in the environment to make it work. So it doesn't work all the time, whereas, Wall of Force does. So, I wouldn't say someone's stupid for thinking Wall of Force is better, but I like Wall of Stone the best. And it worked fantastic here. So we went into the second battle. I had to use my Rod of the Packkeeper right away just to get 1 spell slot back, so I had some oomph. And we went into it, and luckily it wasn't that difficult a battle. I put the map up. You see, it was just against 3 Wraiths. So the Wraiths came in, we peppered them down, they died, they hit us a couple times. No big deal. The more important thing was that even though I gave a great argument to this ghost, because I really enjoyed role-playing this character, this was the first Gauntlet that had role-playing stuff, and I was so happy that Mike was able to keep those snippets of the original footage, because I love role-playing this character, man. I have so much fun. He's so flamboyantly evil. It's just really cool to get into that mindset and, break out the evil. Always so fun to do that. So yeah, I gave a really good argument to this ghost, and the dice betrayed me. I only had a 12.5% chance to fail, and I failed. I did not get a short rest. So that's bad. I had no spell slots, and everybody was hurting, and we couldn't get a short rest, which is a perfect time to break out Sanctuary Vessel, right? I mean, what an amazing power, and this was just a great opportunity to showcase how great it was, and so it allowed us to get a short rest in, only 10 minutes, as we were transitioning to the third encounter, and I was able to get all my spell slots back, and even have my Summon Beholderkin left over because of the 1 hour casting time, and I only cast it like 10 minutes ago. So I was really overflowing with power going into the third encounter, and we wiped the floor with them. In large part because Immovable Object came in clutch. These things had a juiced up telekinetic thrust attack that would bounce people off floors and, knock them prone, and, it was really nasty. And it didn't do jack to us because of Immovable Object. So if you guys have Limited Wish, make sure you cast that on your clothes and such so that you are immune to force movement. It's pretty cool. So we then again failed our investigation check for the artifact that would have gotten us a short rest. Had a 49% chance to fail, and we failed. So we went into the fourth battle, which was very difficult. It was difficult. It turned out to be difficult, even though I was never actually too concerned for Scourge because it was outdoors. Scourge automatically wins encounters outdoors for the most part. The difficulty here was that there was a church in which people could hide, or enemies could hide, so I wouldn't be able to destroy them from the air. So my tactics were again similar. I set up at range, and the point was to just blast them from range and force them to come outside. I was able to use a minor illusion to create the illusion of a stone bunker. That is a super powerful tactic that I think most people who have ranged capabilities should be using. It's an illusion of a stone bunker, exactly the same as I would create with stone shape. So, unless they make an investigation check or actually try to destroy the bunker, they are not going to be able to make attacks against you as long as you're, crouching down underneath and then popping up to make your attacks. Just makes all kinds of sense. So that's what we did, and it worked pretty much like a charm, with the guys on the interior getting shredded by range attacks until they were forced to come out. There was a complication where the assassin and the Winterwolf showed up, and they killed all the tiny servants, and they do the assassin does a crazy amount of damage, and the Winterwolf ended up chasing my expert all around, and the orc got killed, but I wasn't ever worried. I was able to play the flying and cover game. When you're on top of a building and they're inside, you can always fly to the roof and to the doorway to get ranged attacks off, and they usually can't do anything about it. And that's basically what happened here. We managed to finish them off, and then we tried to take a rest. I knew there was only one more encounter coming, but that was metagaming. I didn't know that. And we were kind of beat up, even though I still had 2 spell slots remaining and an active summon. So I wanted to try and get the Kenku up into fighting shape so that he didn't die right away. I also thought that, the enemy doesn't have an infinite number of forces. If they send all of their forces out to meet me here, it would be on terms that were advantageous for me. And if they split their forces, then I wouldn't have to fight them all at once. And that's exactly what happened. Half of their forces came out, a mage and a couple flame skulls, and they attacked us. Now, I had split us up for the short rest. I put the Kenku downstairs, and I had Scourge and his Beholderkin resting up on the roof. I put an Armor of Agathis with one of my spell slots on Scourge, or on Bilbron, just in case he took damage, and I reserved one slot in case I needed to Dimension Door up and blow stuff up from up in the air. And these things showed up, dropped a couple of fireballs. One of them was basically negated by my Armor of Agathis. The other ones did more or less piddly damage, and I was able to dispatch those things more or less. One of the flame skulls limped away with 1 hit point, but they were able to kill the expert. So I managed to finally complete my short rest and go into the final encounter with full power, except I was alone and had only Fargar with me. So even though I had full 3 spell slots, I decided not to go in with an active summon because, one, I didn't really know what scenario I was going into or what kind of summon that I would need, and you can also cast summons at a pretty good range away from you, which gives them advantageous position, and if you precast, you can't do that. So I decided to take a risk. I mean, I really thought about this, but I decided not to precast going in, and that turned out to be the right call. We were in a fairly narrow series of corridors, although thankfully had a high 30-foot ceiling, so I was able to get to the ceiling, and this stone golem that was there wasn't literally able to do anything to me except for slow me at the beginning. And so, yeah, me and Fargar against a stone golem, a couple of priests, a mage, a flame skull, and the mind flayer, who was not really involved at the beginning. And I was able to take control of this battle by, playing the range and cover game, flying out of range of the stone golem, putting my beholderkin up there so that it blows away those priests and flame skulls and such. And then once I was putting a hurting on them, they retreated back behind the doors, and it actually turned out to be a pretty good, pretty advantageous scenario for me. Even though, by the way, the maps had been screwed up all game and were working way against me because they were very much smaller than they were supposed to be. So stuff that had appeared at range was able to close with me much faster. And, as a range character, having more range is to my advantage. So the maps were squishy, and so I had a huge disadvantage from there. But in this case, it worked. I would have been able to get my attacks off anyway with 300-foot range, but the beholderkin has only 150-foot range. So in this case, I was able to set up pretty far away and just start breaking the door down with my familiar, because objects don't really have that many hit points or much durability in 5e. They're pretty easy to break. So started breaking the door down. The Mind Flayer was starting to panic because I was too far away for his Mind Blast, and most of his allies were shredded. And so he came down and tried some stuff with Confusion and Sleep and Lightning Bolt, but I was able to power him down from range, and then when he, once the door was destroyed, decided to go around the corner to get cover for my attacks, I was able to just put a Summon Fiend right in that room and blow him away to defeat the Gauntlet and bring that ritual to an end. So, really good times. I had a real blast. It was a real tactical conundrum for my favorite character ever, and I was really happy to be able to get through it. Thanks so much to the DM, John Sicari, and thanks so much to Mike from CMCC Builds for putting this together. And so please check them out. They do great work, and I had a ton of fun. And if you want to see how level 14 Dowlock performs under stress test conditions, it's a lot of fun. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I will hopefully make some videos here soon, and talk to you guys again. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron Bafflestone. See you next time.